Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Deep Dive.
Yeah, welcome back.
You guys sent in a play from the Texans Jaguars game
Ooh.
that has everyone talking,
Uh-oh.
and we're ready to break it all down. We're talking about Texans linebacker Azeez Al-Shaair's hit on Jaguars quarterback Trevor Lawrence.
Right.
And we're going to be taking a deep dive into an article from Pro Football Talk to see just why everyone's buzzing about it.
It definitely caught my eye, too.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been so much talk about potential suspensions, player safety, all that. So let's rewind and unpack exactly what happened on the field.
All right, so picture this.
Okay.
Second quarter, Texans versus Jaguars.
Got it.
Lawrence is scrambling and decides to slide, to protect himself.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
That's the smart move as a quarterback.
You got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, once a quarterback starts that slide, they're considered down, like a surrender in the middle of a play.
Yeah. Defenders are not allowed to hit them.
Makes sense.
Got to protect those quarterbacks.
Right.
Exactly.
But that's not exactly what happened here.
Right.
Al-Shaair didn't pull up.
Uh-oh.
He went ahead and hit Lawrence.
Oh.
And it wasn't just any hit.
Uh-oh.
He got him right in the head.
In the head?
Well, after the slide was underway.
See, that's what makes this so controversial.
Yeah.
It wasn't just a late hit.
Right.
But it was also helmet to helmet.
Ooh.
On a player already considered down.
Yeah.
Major no-no. In the NFL rulebook.
Obviously. And Lawrence ended up leaving the game with a concussion.
Yeah, that's never good.
No.
So, to no one's surprise, Al-Shaair was ejected.
Immediately.
Yeah, they only use those ejections for, the most blatant violations.
Right.
Especially ones that risk player safety.
Right.
It's a big deal.
So, what happens now?
Wow.
The article mentioned a possible suspension for Al-Shaair.
Right.
What's the deal with that? Well, Adam Schefter over at ESPN has been reporting on this.
Yeah.
And he's saying that a suspension is very likely, although the length is still unknown.
Right.
To really understand why this is such a big deal, we need to look back at the NFL's track record with these types of hits.
Okay, walk me through it.
Okay, so the NFL...
What's the backstory here?
The NFL has been under immense pressure to get serious about these illegal hits.
Yeah.
Especially on quarterbacks.
Right.
I mean, they're the stars of the show.
Yeah.
And the league wants to protect them.
Mm-hmm.
So a suspension in this case would send a strong message.
I guess no one wants their star player taken out by a dirty hit.
Exactly.
What makes this different from any other penalty?
Right.
They throw flags all the time, right?
True. A fine is one thing.
Right.
A slap on the wrist.
Right.
But a suspension that actually takes the player off the field for games, which, impacts the team.
It hits them where it hurts, literally taking away playing time.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But is Al-Shaair really looking at missing games for this one hit?
That's the question.
Yeah?
ESPN hasn't given a specific number of games.
Right.
And there are a lot of factors that come into play, like the player's history.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
You mean like if he's had other penalties?
Yes.
Before?
And guess what? This isn't Al-Shaair's first rodeo.
Oh, really?
With unnecessary roughness.
What do you mean?
Earlier this season, he was fined for punching Bears running back Rashawn Johnson.
Oh, wow.
After hitting quarterback Caleb Williams.
So he's done something similar before.
He has.
That doesn't look good.
Not really.
For him, this previous incident definitely adds fuel to the fire.
It does.
Paints a picture of a player who maybe has a bit of a problem playing by the rules when it comes to protecting quarterbacks.
When it comes to quarterbacks in particular.
Okay, so we've got a potentially lengthy suspension looming over Al-Shaair.
Right.
And he's got a history of these questionable hits.
Yeah.
What does this mean for the Texans?
Well, that's where things get tricky.
Okay.
The Texans have a bye in Week 14.
Okay.
Which means any potential suspension may not actually start until Week 15 against the Dolphins.
So there's a chance he could miss that game.
Right.
And aren't the Dolphins a pretty tough opponent this year?
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
They're a contender.
They're looking pretty good.
And losing a key defensive player like Al-Shaair, even for one game, could have a huge impact on the Texans.
Okay, so let's say he does get suspended.
Okay.
How big of a blow is this for the Texans, really?
I mean...
They have other players, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
But Al-Shaair is their starting linebacker.
Right.
He's a key part of their defense.
Yeah.
And his absence would definitely be felt.
Right.
They would have to shuffle things around. Rely on less experienced players.
Right.
And potentially change their entire defensive strategy.
Wow.
Yeah.
So one hit could have a ripple effect on the entire team's performance.
It could.
This is why I love these deep dives.
Yeah.
We get to see how these seemingly isolated incidents can have a much wider impact.
Absolutely.
So interesting.
And it begs the question.
Yeah.
How will the Texans adjust without Al-Shaair?
Right.
Will it be enough to hold their own against the Dolphins?
And what about the other side of the coin?
Oh, yeah.
We've talked a lot about Al-Shaair and the Texans, but what about Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars?
Yeah, good point.
Let's shift gears and unpack that side of the story after a quick break.
Sounds good.
Yeah, you're right. It's easy to get caught up in the suspension drama, but we can't forget about the guy on the receiving end of that hit.
Right.
Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah.
How is he doing after all this?
That's the big question, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the concussion's a major concern.
Yeah, obviously.
Concussions aren't just a headache. You know, they can have some pretty serious long-term effects on the player's health, both physically and mentally.
Yeah. It's scary to think about.
It is.
I mean, these guys are out there putting their bodies on the line every week. And sometimes it feels like we forget that there's a real human cost to this game.
Absolutely. And Lawrence's case really highlights that vulnerability of quarterbacks.
Even when they're trying to protect themselves.
Yeah, even when they're doing everything right.
He did everything by the book.
He did.
Slid to avoid contact. And still ended up with a concussion.
And still got hurt.
Yeah.
It's tough.
So what does this mean for the Jaguars?
Well,
are they going to be okay without their star quarterback?
I mean, the good news is that the Jaguars do have a capable backup in C.J. Beathard. He's a veteran who can step in and manage the offense. But let's be real. Lawrence is the franchise quarterback. He's the guy that they're building their future around. So losing him for any amount of time is a huge blow.
Not just for their immediate chances, but for their long-term plans.
Long-term plans, exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
And this kind of leads to a broader conversation about player safety in the NFL. If quarterbacks are getting concussed even when they slide, what more can the league do?
To protect them.
Yeah, to protect these guys.
It's a tough question.
It is a tough question.
Some people might say the NFL needs to come down even harder on these kinds of hits, maybe with longer suspensions or even fines for the teams themselves.
There's definitely a push for that.
Yeah.
The argument is that hitting a player's wallet or impacting a team's record will make coaches and players think twice about risking a dangerous hit.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But I can also see the other side of the argument. You know, football is a physical game.
It is.
And some people might say that trying to completely eliminate all risk would change the nature of the sport.
Exactly. It's a very delicate balance.
Yeah.
You want to protect the players. But you don't want to sanitize the game to the point where it loses its excitement.
Or its intensity.
Exactly.
So where do we go from here?
That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah. How do we reconcile these two seemingly conflicting goals? Preserving the essence of football while also prioritizing player safety.
It's complex.
Yeah.
And there's no easy answer. But I think a big part of it comes down to education. And changing the culture of the game.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, we need to start teaching young players from a young age that protecting themselves and their opponents is just as important as winning. It's about instilling this sense of responsibility and respect
for the well-being of everyone on the field.
Exactly.
I like that. It's about changing the mindset, not just relying on stricter rules and punishments, but how do we actually make that happen? Is it even realistic to think we can change the way an entire sport is played?
It's a challenge, no doubt. But I think it starts with leadership. The NFL needs to set the tone, and coaches at all levels need to reinforce those values. It's also about empowering players to speak up. And to hold each other accountable.
To say something.
Yeah, if someone sees a teammate doing something dangerous, they need to feel comfortable calling them out.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's a powerful message.
It is.
And it goes beyond just protecting quarterbacks.
It does.
It's about creating a culture of safety and respect for all players.
For everyone.
Regardless of position.
Regardless of position.
Yeah.
I think that's so important.
It is. It's about shifting the focus from...
you know, winning at all costs. To competing with integrity and protecting the health of everyone involved.
I love that.
It might sound idealistic. But I truly believe that it's possible.
Well, I certainly hope you're right. It would be amazing to see the NFL lead the way.
It would?
In creating a culture of safety and responsibility in sports.
It would be huge.
But let's shift gears a bit.
Okay.
You mentioned earlier that Al-Shaair had a previous incident involving unnecessary roughness.
Yes, he did.
What can you tell me about that?
So earlier this season, in a game against the Bears, he was fined for punching running back Roschon Johnson after hitting quarterback Caleb Williams.
Another incident involving a quarterback.
Another one.
That's definitely not a good look for Al-Shaair.
Not a good look.
What are the implications of this previous fine?
Well, it definitely adds weight to the argument.
Okay.
For a suspension in the Lawrence case.
Right.
It suggests a pattern of behavior.
Yeah.
A tendency towards unnecessary roughness.
Right.
Particularly when it comes to protecting quarterbacks.
So the NFL might look at this and say, okay, this isn't just a one-time mistake.
Right.
This guy has a history of making these kinds of dangerous hits, and we need to send a strong message.
Exactly.
And remember, we're not just talking about fines and suspensions here.
Right.
We're talking about a player's reputation and his future in the league.
It's bigger than just this one game.
Exactly.
It is.
That's a good point. If Al-Shaair continues down this path, he could develop a reputation as a dirty player.
Right.
Which could hurt his chances of getting signed by other teams in the future.
Absolutely.
Teams want players that are talented and reliable.
Yeah.
But they also want players who are disciplined.
Of course.
And play by the rules.
Yes.
A history of fines and suspensions is a red flag.
It is a big red flag.
That can make teams hesitant to take a chance on a player. So while we wait for the NFL to make a decision on Al-Shaair's fate, this incident has sparked a lot of important conversations about player safety, the culture of the game, and the responsibility of both the league and the players to protect each other.
It really has.
Well, on that note, let's wrap things up with a final takeaway for our listener. Something to ponder as we conclude this deep dive.
I like it.
Okay, so we've talked about the possible suspension, the ripple effects for both the Texans and the Jaguars.
Yeah.
But, you know, you sent this in for a deep dive.
Right.
So where does it all lead? What's the bigger picture here?
It really gets to the heart of something that we struggle with in football.
Okay.
How much risk are we willing to accept?
Right.
You know, the NFL has tried to make the game safer with rules like the one protecting the sliding quarterbacks.
Right.
But incidents like this show there's still a long way to go.
And it's not just about the NFL, right? What happens at the pro level trickles down.
Right.
High school and college players. They're watching these games, learning from what they see.
Exactly. If the pros are pushing the limits, even dangerously, that message gets sent loud and clear to younger players. It almost normalizes that risky behavior.
Right.
Even when safety's at stake.
So what's the solution? Is there even a way to make a sport like football truly safe?
Right.
I mean, it's inherently violent, right?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And there are no easy answers.
Right.
Some people think we need to radically change the game.
Okay.
Like getting rid of tackling altogether.
Whoa.
That would certainly reduce injuries.
Yeah.
But is it still football at that point?
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
It would be a completely different sport.
Right.
But I can see how some people might reach that conclusion if they feel like the current rules just aren't protecting players enough.
Exactly. And that's where the discussion gets really interesting.
Yeah.
How do we balance the inherent risk of football with the need to protect players?
Yeah.
Where do we draw the line?
It feels like a constant tug of war, doesn't it?
It does.
You want to preserve the excitement and intensity of the game, but not at the cost of players' health.
Right.
It's a tough one.
Exactly. And the answer isn't just about rules and penalties.
Right.
It's also about changing the culture.
Okay.
Starting at the youth level.
Yeah.
We need to teach young players that it's okay to be aggressive.
Right.
But it's not okay to be reckless.
Yeah.
It's about respecting your opponents.
Right.
And understanding that their well-being matters just as much as yours does.
So it's about instilling a sense of responsibility.
Yeah.
Both for yourself and for the other players on the field.
Exactly.
That's a powerful message.
It is.
And it goes beyond just protecting quarterbacks.
Absolutely.
It's about creating a safer environment for everyone involved.
It's about the whole game. Yeah.
It is.
So where does this leave us, the fans?
Right.
Do we just sit back and watch this all play out?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think we have a huge role.
Yeah.
As fans, we have a voice.
We do.
We can support rule changes that prioritize safety. We can hold players accountable for their actions.
Even our favorite ones.
Even our favorite ones.
Right.
And most importantly, we can have these conversations.
Yeah.
These deep dives.
Like them coming.
Yeah, and keep raising awareness about the issues that matter.
You got it. We can't just be passive observers.
No.
We need to engage, think critically, use our voices to advocate for the changes we want to see in the game.
That's the key takeaway here.
Yeah.
The future of football isn't set in stone.
Right.
It's shaped by the choices we make, the conversations we have, and the values we prioritize.
Well said. So for you listening out there, we leave you with this. What do you think about the Al-Shaair hit and what it means for football?
Right.
Do you think the NFL is doing enough to protect its players, or are more drastic changes needed? Yeah, what do you think?
It's a complex issue with no easy answers, but it's a conversation worth having.
It is.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, and keep those questions coming.